Hello, everyone, and welcome to Future Salespeople's weekly sales round robin. This week, Alex Guest, myself, Andrew Wojslavik, have a great topic for you, and it's expanding and honing value. Mr. Guest, how are you feeling about that today?
I dig this one. It's something that I was chatting to one of our sales coaching clients to a few weeks ago. I've bounced the idea back and forth since then. So excited to dig in and see how it can help everyone else.
Yeah, likewise. And so the reason outside of Alex working with one of our sales coaching clients, why we thought this would be a really interesting topic to bring up is simply because we're hearing from a lot of startups, a lot of sales organizations out there that they're missing out on sales opportunities because they're not expanding value or they're missing value with their buyers. And so that's what we wanted to cover in our sales round robin this week. And one of the stats we have from Salesforce's state of sales is that 79% of buyers say it's absolutely critical to interact with a salesperson who's a trusted advisor, not just a sales rep. All too often, buyers get on the phone and all they hear is a sales rep's motions, the sales rep's needs, and not focusing on actually the value that the buyer is looking for from that interaction, from that sales engagement, whatever it may be. So how can we go ahead and flip the script from being just a sales rep being focused on us to focusing on our customer and adding value? In a lot of ways, this starts and actually happens within your sales process and where these things tend to happen within the buyer journey. And what we have up here right now is future salespeople's foundational buyer journey. We're missing the awareness phase, but a couple things here, right? So when a buyer is typically engaging with a sales professional, they're typically identifying their issues and they're going through and starting to see what that issue may be in issue research, solution research, and starting to understand the potential impact or ramifications of that. From there, they're actually starting to go through and get into deeper conversations, really starting to understand the overall impact of that issue through solution research and through solution selection. And then finally, we're getting into understanding the ultimate impact or value that your solution is bringing to them in that ROI calculated throughout solution selection and negotiations. Now, when it comes to actually making an impact and elevating yourself in the eyes of a buyer to being that trusted sales professional, there are a couple key things that you need to start off with. And it starts off within the issue research or solution research with your buyer. It comes back down to your discovery, really doing a deeper discovery to understand what brings them to your dialogue, what they're looking to accomplish. And then ultimately, you're going to leverage your insights that you have on your ideal customer profile, how those individuals and those organizations tend to use your platform, the benefits that they get to understand and expand potential value that they can get from your conversation, from your solution. Then ultimately, you're going to start bringing that larger dialogue into the solution selection once you're starting to identify not only the initial issue that they have, the issue plus one that you can work with. And that could be multiple variables. Alex and I don't want to go ahead and set up say that you need to find 2, 3, 5 different opportunities to add value or new services into the mix, but you are looking to deliver that appropriate mix to the buyer so that they can see the full value return from your services. How did I do, Mr. Guest? What do you have to add there, my friend?
No, I think that's great. So ultimately, you want to start with whatever value they're coming in on. So issue research, they are probably not talking to your sales reps at this point. Really, what they're doing is they're researching their issue. They're Googling things. They're going to associations that they're a part of. They're asking their peers and their colleagues. But you can start to pick up those breadcrumbs because you start to see those anonymous website visitors that are going to specific pages that had Googled specific things, that are reading specific topics on your blog. So you can start to see where those potential issues lie and the value that you're going to provide. Once it hits solution research and you start talking to your buyers, that's going to be where you are going to be able to confirm that value and then begin to expand upon it based on what your solution provides. Within solution selection, that's really where you should be hitting the peak of how broad you've expanded that value, because you want to show that buyer all of the ways that you can provide value to solve their initial issue, but then also paint a picture and tell a story about what it looks like when you've resolved their issues and you can move on to the next thing. So it's not just the one thing that you can do and solve, it's all of the things that you can do as they continue to be a loyal customer of yours. So it being that pinnacle and that peak, you then also want to start to think about honing it back down, right? Because they came in after this very specific use case to solve their issue, the value that they were looking for. So as you are going through that process of calculating ROI, you want to be able to hone how your buyer is calculating ROI based off of their issue priority. Sometimes, and I would say actually most of the times, it's what they came in on, right? They had a pretty good idea of what their issue was, the solution that they were looking for. So you would likely go back to that. If along the way you discovered a higher priority issue, you want to make sure that that's included as you start to hone it. You also want to make sure that as ROI is being calculated, that it's based off of your highest impact areas for your solution. If you have part of your solution that saves $1 versus part of your solution that saves $10, you want to make sure that you're featuring the $10 solution over the $1. And then finally, you want to make sure that there's good alignment between the issues that you are solving and you're honing down to, and then those impact areas. If you have misalignment, it's not going to make sense to an investor or a financial buyer that you might encounter, because they might not see how an impact area could solve an issue if they don't jive with one another. So as you start to hone, you want to make sure that that tells a good story. And again, that good story is going to be inclusive of the highest priority issues, the biggest impact areas, and how those mesh with one another. There's the added benefit here of helping out your customer success partners in that they don't need to eat an entire elephant when a new customer comes on board with a new client that starts. They're not expecting to get this N plus 1 plus 2 plus X value from day one. Instead, they're starting with N. They know when they're going to be able to take the next value step, that N plus 1. That's more of a land and expand conversation, and that's a topic that Andrew and I intend on covering soon. But
in order to do that, because that's a great topic. Yeah. How do we do this, Alex? Yeah.
So in order to do this, like most things, interview your prospects and your customers. Interview prospects that didn't make it all the way through the buying process. It's a good way to learn where you can potentially improve and demonstrate more value, where you should be expanding, maybe where you should have honed more. And then also your customers, those that have made it through the entire process. How could it have gone faster for them? How could they have derived more value sooner when they became your customer? And it really gets down to training your team on understanding your buyer. So this is your ICP, this is your buyer committee, these are your personas. Understand that journey so you can map all of this to your sales stages like we did here. And then finally, you need to know what your impact is for your ideal customer profiles and your buyer personas. Because if you know exactly your product use cases and how that aligns to value and impact stories, you can more effectively bring that up earlier in the process to start that expansion, and then start to hone based off of the priority and the value once you get towards the end of your sales cycle. So that's, I think, everything we wanted to cover today. Anything else, Andrew?
No, I mean, I love this just simplicity of this last slide. It's understand your buyer, understand their journey, and know your impact. The more knowledge you have, the better able you are to communicate value earlier on in the sales cycle, and better able you are to, as a selling organization, help your buyer understand potential value, or that N+1. So I thought you did a nice job there, Alex. But what do we have cooking next, sir?
Up next, we are going over the first cold email. This is a little tongue-in-cheek because we are actually going to be talking about the very first cold email from back in the 70s, but then also relaying that into the value that you should be presenting in your first cold email. In each one of your outreach campaigns, that first cold email needs to set the stage. So we'll be going through a little bit of history for the first time, and then also how you can learn from that and derive value now in 2021, so 50 plus years later.
I love it. I love history. I love history of sales. That's bringing a lot of different interests and passions for me. But Mr. Guest, this has been a really fun one. I really appreciate your time. Viewers, we really appreciate your time, your likes, your comments, your subscriptions to our channel, or your follows on our LinkedIn networks. We really do appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks.